This is News Fighters, where we fight the news so you don't have to.
Hello everyone, welcome to News Fighters for today. It's Sunday, March 19th, 2019. I'm Dylan Bain, I'm here with your special Express Edition Election Night Roundup. And to quote the Labor Party this morning...
Let's start right out. Hey, what happened?
Yes, and it certainly seems as if...
The Labor Party looks as if it may have lost the unlosable election.
I mean, has Bill Shorten just lost the unlosable election?
Have you lost the unlosable election?
Okay, but before we get on to election night itself, let's have a quick glance outside of the bubble at what the electorate was feeling in the lead-up to maybe make more sense of the result. First of all, Studio 10's Kerry Anne Kennerly had some interesting insights.
If Bill Shorten gets in, it is the end of life as we know it. One thing I'm seriously outraged about, the money, the millions and millions they will spend on a gender commission. And that child will go, I want to be either a boy or a girl. Please give me whatever I need. And you, as a parent, will have no choice. That's the gender commission.
But it wasn't just her. Listening to the Alan Jones radio show also offered some amazing insight into what the electorate's been feeling in the lead up to this election.
And I believe, Mr. Shorten, you are committing treason against Australia.
Just this uncapped migrant parents scheme and the transgender theory, everything, all the radical social policies they want to introduce.
The Labor Party get in, they potentially will affect significantly their inheritances.
However, there was one caller to Alan Jones's radio show who I totally agreed with.
The majority of people who are very politically not savvy, they're so gullible and believe all the rubbish.
Now, it's not just disinformation that possibly affected the election result. I think a lot of the electorate is just confused and disengaged. Check out this woman that ABC News 24 interviewed on election day morning in Queensland.
Can I ask what the key issues are you here today?
Sorry, I've just woken up actually. The hospitals and that, I think, should be the one. And pensioners haven't been said too much about either. I don't think it's fair.
Is it going to change the way you vote today, or you always vote the same way?
No, I'll change indifferently this year.
And can I ask which way you are going to vote this year? You don't have to say.
Well, I'll just say it anyway. Liberal.
And what is it about the coalition that you like?
Well, I think also they'll do better for the people. And I think that to do with the hospitals, that's the main thing for me, is the hospitals.
The hospitals?
And the cancer patients, that they said they're going to help a lot more.
So that was Bill Shorten doing the cancer patients?
Yes, it was Shorten, but I think he's got better interests in the people. He's not a funny person, I will admit. You know, he's not funny, but he
So Bill Shorten being the Labor...
Yeah, I think that he'll be fine.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. So obviously, a lot of people still making up their minds and perhaps a bit of confusion.
Now, you might not like Alan Jones and everything he stands for, but you can't argue with the fact he actually has his finger on the pulse of the electorate. He was the first TV pundit to accurately predict the election result on Saturday at a surprisingly early 4:45 p.m.
In an analysis of the seats, I'm struggling to see where... I'm not saying Scott Morrison can get the 76 either. But I'm simply saying all the talk's about Labor, and I don't see how they're going to get to 76.
Yes, and Alan Jones was wearing a ridiculous bright green suit on Channel 7, something even Beyond Blue founder Jeff Kennett couldn't help but ridicule him over.
Wearing smashed avocado coats to a night like this would make a substantial difference. Were you wearing that coat when you went to night? I'm just trying
You're obsessed with it.
It would have been seen to be a green.
Meanwhile, over at Channel 10, their election night coverage started at 3 p.m. They had so much airtime to fill, they literally just walked into a country pub and asked someone to tell them a story.
This is John Tractor Ferguson. How are you?
Going well, mate, going well.
Kick us off. Why do they call you Tractor?
Well, it's a long story, but I can tell you if you want me to.
We've got time.
Channel 10 also managed to accurately capture the mood of the night with their ad break music, which included a classic rock song about drowning.
Who chose the music playlist?
Really enjoying the playlist tonight.
Meanwhile, over at Channel 9, their set reflected the mood of many ALP supporters that night by breaking down.
The Labor Party for many years now, the governor of Western Australia.
But just the set's falling apart.
Anyways, back to...
What happened?
For Labor. Turns out, the polls were wrong.
And at the moment, the projected figures just do not look like the opinion polls that were published. In fact, they look like the reverse of the opinion polls.
Well, I think we can all agree that the polls are not reflected in what we've seen so far.
This is a shambles when it comes to the opinion polling.
Arthur, if news poll is so ropey, is it time you guys stop sacking your leaders based on it?
And many of the pundits were saying
it's possible that we are ending up with a hung parliament tonight.
I think it's increasingly looking like a real possibility of a hung parliament.
Did someone say William hung in Parliament?
She bangs! She bangs! Oh, baby, when she moves, she moves!
And when the ABC's Anthony Green called the result...
Let's put out on the table here, at this stage, we think the Morrison government has been re-elected. We can't see an alternative to a Morrison government in the numbers we're seeing at the moment.
It caught both sides of politics off guard.
This was not the night any of us were anticipating.
I have to say, until it happened, I didn't think it would happen.
One factor for Labor's shocking results, according to Graham Richardson, was the franking credits policy.
65 plus voters, they've just left the ALP.
And also, according to Christina Kennerly, it was the Liberals' successful relabelling of it as a retirees tax.
Different candidates were telling me that they were worried that the retiree tax campaign was biting, that pensioners wrongly believed they were going to be affected. When we have a policy that does not affect 96% of the population, how did we manage not to explain that very well? And how did we manage to allow the coalition to portray it as a retiree tax when it was nothing of the sort?
Shadow Treasurer Chris Bowen blamed a non-existent death tax.
I probably got more feedback about the so-called death tax
than
about any of our real policies. I mean, we considered lots of tax options during our 6 years in opposition. I've got to tell you, death tax was never one of them.
Yes,
it was just a complete invention.
I hear on the grapevine it was.
Yeah. Nonsense.
Another factor was Labor's ambitious climate change policy, which Alan Jones goaded Chris Bowen over.
Alan, one of the differences between you and I is I believe in climate change. I believe it's caused by human activity.
I believe in the scoreboard.
I respect that you don't. I respect the fact that you don't.
The completely unelectable Clive Palmer, of course, thanked himself for Labor not getting elected.
Our shifty shorten ads across Australia, I think we've been very successful in suppressing the Labor vote.
And of course, Nationals MP Barnaby Joyce couldn't help but shout his theories on why Labor lost.
Because the Labor Party have left Barcaldine behind, left the Tree of Knowledge behind, wandered down, got themselves a caftan and some incense sticks, hanging around the centre of Sydney. Well, fellas, I don't think you're going to win the election because of that. So wake up and take a reality pill. Take away our franking credits, get rid of negative gearing, double capital gains tax, make us drive an electric car. Yeah, sure, I want to vote for them. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea, like cutting off my left foot.
Julie Bishop had her superstitions.
Every time the Sydney Swans play on an election night and win, the coalition wins.
But of course, the most perfect explanation for Labor's loss came from Bill Shorten.
We didn't get enough votes.
The shock result certainly made the Liberal and Labor parties' celebrations slightly different to what people were anticipating.
Look, this isn't the party people turned up for, that's for sure, Lee.
I'm reminded of the Bob Dylan lyric, something's happening but you don't know what it is.
Yeah, not quite the Bob Dylan lyric that Labor and Green supporters would have picked, though.
Everybody must get stoned.
Meanwhile, after a long night on the ABC coverage, Penny Wong was ready for something else.
Hopefully can have a gin and tonic fairly soon.
I reckon can someone please hook that up for Penny out the back?
Okay, and the first major concession speech of the night was from former Liberal Prime Minister Tony Abbott. And wow, he really doesn't care about appearing to be overly masculine anymore, as he lifted up the lectern like the Incredible Hulk.
I'm going to move this lectern out.
In his speech, he said he wasn't a quitter.
That if I had to lose, so be it. I'd rather be a loser than a quitter.
So here's Tony Abbott's speech in summary for any 90s kids out there. Now, with Tony Abbott gone and the coalition on a path to victory, former Foreign Minister Julie Bishop decided it was time to start dropping some truth bombs.
Was Tony Abbott pulling the strings on Peter Dutton to remove Malcolm Turnbull as the Prime Minister?
Yes, without doubt. He's a climate change denier personified and clearly out of step with his electorate. The Liberal Party will have to reassess its position on climate change.
Well, Julie Bishop's outburst reminded me of another Bob Dylan lyric.
When you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose.
Anyways, onto Scott Morrison's victory speech, and he certainly leaned into his new catchphrase.
Now how good is Australia? And how good are Australians? How good's Queensland?
I can't believe he forgot to say how good is Labor complacency. Anyways, then ScoMo went on to thank his staff, and his language got a little bit blue.
Can I thank the cunk, John Kunkel?
Now, I know it's a term of affection in Australia, ScoMo, but please, your kids are on stage with you. Anyways, he went on to thank his voters, the everyday Australians.
It has been those Australians who have worked hard every day.
Yeah, me and a lot of people I know used to work hard every day too, at the ABC. But anyways, how good's Australia, right?
These are the quiet Australians who have won a great victory tonight.
Very interesting there to see Scott Morrison paraphrasing one of the most honest and trustworthy of the US presidents, Richard Nixon.
The great silent majority.
I mean, him and Nixon really have a lot in common, you know, both having corruption scandals called Watergate happen to them. Anyways, in summing up his victory, Scott Morrison said this.
I have always believed in miracles.
Yes, and the miracle term wound up being bandied about quite a lot on the front pages of the Sunday papers.
ScoMo's miracle is the front page of the Herald Sun.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the Herald Sun front page was announced on Channel 9 almost a whole hour before he even said the miracle line on stage. Quite a coincidence the way those Murdoch papers just happen to know what Scott Morrison's speeches are going to say. It's what a coincidence. Anyways, at the end of the night, it all came down to Scott Morrison's mother, who perfectly encapsulated what the Australian people were feeling.
I'm lost for words, Ben. I really am. I don't know whether to laugh or cry or what, but I think it'll hit me tomorrow or sometime.
Didn't realise she was a Labor voter. Anyways, after his victory speech, Scott Morrison stepped off stage and gave an exclusive interview to Channel 9's Ben Fordham, where he outlined his immediate policy priorities for the nation.
What happens tomorrow?
Well, church is in the morning, as usual, and then Sharkies are playing tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, everyone, that's Newsfighters for today. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being with us during the election campaign. If you're a new listener, go back and listen to some of our great episodes. We covered the debates, we covered the budget, we've been there through the whole stinking thing. In the meantime, subscribe on your favourite podcasting app, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at NewsFightersPod. To keep in touch with updates, also check out our website at www.newsfighters.com. I'm Dylan Bain. Keep fighting. Bye for now.
This is News Fighters, where we fight the news.